Stream Elements. Cave Fibers is now live. Streaming makers and crafting. Sock Madness Round 3. Oh bother.
Well, hello everybody. Welcome to KB Fibers. I am on to, oops, you can see that. I am on to sock 2. Sock 1 has been completed. I am on to sock number 2. And there's cable work going there. It's kind of hard to see because of the dark color. These are supposed to be bees. They're actually flies for me. I don't know what to call them. I'm just going to call them oh bother socks. If Pooh Bear was blue and he wore a purple shirt, this is what he would look like, with bees attacking him. Or, I'm sorry, flies attacking him. Oh, gosh. Got my little armrest thing up here, because I've been putting creases on my arms as I lean on the edge of the table. So, I am just going to make it so I am comfortable to keep on knitting, and yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. Just keep on knitting, kitten. Right? That's what we can do. That is what we can do, so that is what we shall do. Yeah. Alright. I am on row 8 of the honeycomb chart. I need to do the chart completely through once, plus back to row 9. So 18 rows and then back to row 9. So I am at row 8 now. That is just kind of an update on where I'm at. Last night I finished the first sock. I did the cuff and got the collar done, and it joined together before he went to bed. All morning today I've worked the sweater, got all the beads put on, so I'm done with the beads. I can put my beading needle away, her hook. So now I'm just gonna work the honeycomb part of the leg that's required, and we'll continue from there. Then we'll have the heel flap and all of that junk. Okay, now we're bringing these two legs together for the A stitch. Yes, Abby Cakes. Abby's enjoying the window. You might hear the window open. More bird sounds or things over there from having the window open. Gotta refresh my memory on how to do the A. Pull this one out. I'm gonna purl it. I am backwards purling it, but it's fine. Slip these two as if to knit them together. Back on the left needle. Gonna grab this one. I could reorientate that stitch the way it's supposed to go, like that. Going to knit that one and purl that one. Purl the stitches between. rinse and repeat. But happy Wednesday. I hope everybody's having a good Wednesday. I've noticed 8 people are already finished with this pair of socks. So there's that. I just figure it's gonna go the way it goes. I mean, you know, it's mostly the faster teams that are done. Fast people they're on U and above. At least at last check about an hour ago. Gotta fix that one. Come on, Stitch, don't be a booger. Oh, bother. As Pooh would say. Fix my undershirt. It's bugging me. It's all rolled up and feels weird. Feels annoying. Pull this up. Come around and grab these. Twist them up. And try to separate them so you can knit and purl. Do the same on the other side. So we try to get this flap to lie down. Thought maybe if I take some of these extra pins and try to hold them down, maybe that would help. I don't know. bum, 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 bum. Bum, bum, bum. Sorry if I'm not on screen. I'm trying to do this A, turning 2 knits into 2 pearls, and a pearl into a knit. Not in an easy way. Not too easily. Glad for pointy needle tips. I'm telling you that. Definitely need it for this pattern. Bum, 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 bum. Row 9. Slip 5. So we got to make it through the pattern and back to this point before we start the heel flap. That is per the requirements, minimum requirements. Just trying to hold all this stuff down. Hopefully if I hold it down, it'll stay down. That's the first side of this round. Come over and do second side. I don't know if this ball of yarn is going to make the whole sock, but we're going to try before we start using the second skein of this yarn. But I have the second skein ready just in case we need it. It is ready. It is ready. Go. Pearl the pearls, net the nets in this round. Easy peasy. Started slightly early today, not too early today. Just been working away on this pair of socks. Trying to get them done before all of the festivities hit for the Easter holiday, because I really don't want to work on these through the Easter holiday. So done or not, I am taking the weekend off. I'm hoping to be done. I got some storms that'll be moving in at some point today as well, from what I understand. But for now, it is beautiful out. We are into the 70s right now, so I do have the window open. Might hear all the extra noises. I don't know that it's really 82, but okay. It does feel warm, but I don't think that it really feels like 82. It feels like maybe 79, but it's okay. Tomorrow we'll have scattered showers. See thunderstorms today. I don't know if it'll give me a timeline. About 6 p.m. it looks like. Oh. Spider. It's about 6 p.m. the storms will start. So pretty much overnight. Winds will get heavier later. It's kind of how we're looking. Mia's napping in her nappy spot there. Abby's in the window. The chickens are having a good old time over there. Hubby is home early. I guess he's the storm coverage guy. found that little spider. It's a tiny little guy. Probably when I went out to the chicken area. Round and round we go. See, it's mostly pearl stitches. Probably should get out and cut grass. It's going to be rainy and stormy tomorrow, so I won't be able to do it tomorrow. Slipping it. Concentrating on one stitch, one section at a time. Ba-dum, bum, bum, bum. go for those Y's again. I'm finding it easier to put these purl stitches on a DPN. It's just making it easier for me, so I knit the knit. Purl these two together. And then knit the knit again. Finding that much easier to do. 2, 3. Slip. Go ahead and knit that one. Slip this next purl stitch. Slip the knit stitch back on that needle. Purl these two together. Hit the knit again. Let's make it simpler. Slip. Right needle, back needle, back to left needle, shove that down, keep the yarn in between the needles, can knit that, swing the needle tip around, purl those together, pull that one out, knit that again. It's easier in trying to pull the stitches apart. Of course, it helps if you don't have a cut on your finger or a band-aid hindering you. Just saying. Why does this not feel right? The yarn's got to go around that. So I had it wrapped around that. think this will stay. Free the yarn, free the yarn. Ay, 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 ay. Makes the fingers hurt. Quite the process to do the stitch. Everything is on and working, right? Yeah, looks
Sammy
like it.
Grandma won. Hi.
Hi, Sammy. How are you doing? You having a good Wednesday? Just working the same old thing, it seems like. I'm hoping to get this done soon.
Hello.
Yarn
So
Spinner
that's why
Tail.
they are
Hello,
called Blue
hello.
Socks So Bother.
Yeah, poo socks. Yeah, oh bother. Totally. This is a poo shirt. These are supposed to be bees, but on mine they look like flies. So if Pooh Bear was blue and was wearing a purple shirt and being attacked by flies, this is what it would look like. I just think I need to put sleeves on here and make it look more like a sweater. Put mini sleeves on the sweater. Otherwise it looks like just a tube. Tube with a collar and a cuff on the bottom.
I am playing. Always need company when playing.
Ooh. Be happy to be your company. Or just, you know, mellow stream. Kind of stitching along, enjoying the music, hearing the chimes outside because there's a breeze. We'll have a storm coming in later today, about dinner time, shortly after stream, so it should be interesting.
Tornado watch right now.
Yeah, let's head it our way. Yep. I forget what state you're in, but Ohio's got much the same. I do have the window open. This is the only window open at the moment.
Yarn Spinner Tales.
82 degrees out, so it's beautiful. Oh, Kentucky. So yeah, you're just below us. Nice. Nice. Yeah, I'm southern Ohio, so Kentucky border for me would be like Portsmouth, which would be an hour south. So I'm more on the eastern side of Kentucky. Yeah, looking forward to a nice weekend.
Yep, we go to Covington a lot.
Okay, yeah, okay. Makes much sense. It's over by Cincinnati, I believe. Is that right?
Yarn Spinner Tales.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm getting to know my geographical down here. All the little cities around.
Across the river.
Yep. Yep. I have a few friends in Cincinnati area. So have you done like the, what is it, I-75 yarn crawl? Because I know that goes from Michigan all the way down to Tennessee now, I think. It's crazy. You can't imagine anybody hitting all the shops, getting their stamps. Getting their little card stamped. I participated once, but that's been quite some time ago.
Yarn spinner sales. No. There's also a very long yard sale crawl from north to south through KY.
Oh wow. Nice. That would be cool. Okay, I think you need to pop that one to the other side briefly.
Yarn spinner sales.
This needs to go in front of it.
Only yarn crawl I ever did was on a knitting cruise, and we all went to yarn stores in Victoria, British Columbia.
Wow, that would be interesting.
Bought Quibat yarn there.
Sweet. That sounds awesome. I've never done anything like that. I've never been on a cruise. I've never been on an airplane. Just don't feel a very heavy need for any of that. I'm very happy and content with all my knitting, spinning, and fiber works that I have going on. Fiberworks of Ohio. Even having some wool process that is Ohio grown. Pretty much.
I feel equally drawn to home and travel. I am like a cat on the wrong side of the door.
I hear ya.
Yarn spinner sales. Oh, please.
Yes. 138 pounds of fleece. It's a lot. By the time it gets processed and washed and everything,
Yarn spinner sales.
yeah.
I'm impressed. Yarn spinner sales. Breed specific.
It's Cheviot, but the breeder or the owner of the sheep has also bred them with other sheep, so they're not all 100% Cheviot. But the fleece is just, it's got, I think, a 21 micron count on it, so it's nice. I actually enjoy spinning that much more than I enjoy spinning merino.
Yarn spinner scales. Then it is worth the processing.
Oh yeah. Even the lady that owns the mill has said that she would be interested in purchasing some of that fiber.
Yarn spinner scales.
She likes it.
I agree, I am not fond of merino.
Well, it's not that I'm not fond of merino, it's just merino is not always all that. You know what I mean? I know a lot of spinners start out with spinning merino, but that is because that's what's available when you go to these shows. These wool festivals. That's what you find the most of there. Besides, yarn that's already been spun and up for sale. And most of those are all machine made, not handmade. Just depends on what you're looking for, I guess. I wouldn't turn down any wool. I would prefer to blend the more rustic ones. Your fave is fin wool? I don't think I've ever had any fin. I have to think on that because the bird is right outside the window. Mating dance. There's a mating dance going on right outside my window. Very interesting. Okay.
Yarn spinner scales. I said the same. Won't turn down any wool, but I have gotten picky now. I like Border Leicester and Polworth wools.
Yeah, Border Leicester is nice. I haven't had a whole lot of Polworth. I get what I can get. Pretty much here. I've gotten to know some sheep farmers along the way, which have been awesome. They actually have little ones now. Little lammies. They're lambing out. They're so cute. Miss Mia making our way to the window. Yeah, did Birdie wake you up? There's like a lot of noise going on outside this window. I'm going to slip that to the front. That will be that pearl. Slip these two as if to knit them together. I can drop that other one back on, and we'll knit the first one, purl the second one.
Yarn Spinner Sales. Going to a fiber fair April 14th in Indiana.
Ooh.
He keeps saying, no more fleeces. I still have some to process.
Yeah, it's a long, hard process to do it all by hand. I usually do it in small portions,
Yarn Spinner
just
Sales.
a little bit at a time.
So I guess that leaves dyed braid of fiber LOL.
I'm about to have a lot of wool. And Geo from in here, Geo Natrix, for my birthday this past weekend, or just, last week Friday was my birthday, and she gave me some silk and some cashmere. So I plan to blend some of that with the Cheviot and then possibly do some dyeing. Make up some colors. Work my way through some of that.
Last chant. Happy belated birthday.
Aw, thank you. My birthday was so awesome. I streamed and you guys just had a gay old time with the bits and gifted subs, and oh my gosh. There was a lot happening. I could hardly keep up. But it was fun.
Yarn Spinner
It
Sales.
was fun.
Sounds like a nice blend.
It should be. I mean, check the stuff out. I mean, this is the cashmere. It's got 14 to 18 microns. And then, well, the Cheviot has about 21 microns. And then there's the mulberry silk raised from silkworms on a diet of mulberry leaves. So it should make some pretty interesting blends. No, it doesn't take much. And then I also have Angora, because I had a German giant Angora rabbit, so I still have much of her fleece. I can also blend some of that in with the Cheviot. Should be interesting. That one, slip those two, swap those two, twist that one so it's right, so I don't have to think about purling the back loop when I come back. So this next round, after I finish this side, will be the last row of the chart. So then I'll have 9 more rows, and then I will be on to the heel flap. Heel flap after that. Heel flap, heel turn, work on the gusset as we get going on the foot. Then it's just a matter of following the chart.
Stream Elements. Welcome to Cave Fibers. I hope you enjoy the stream.
Indeed. Just like to keep it peaceful and, you know, nice easy going stream. Can concentrate good with this more mellow music. Have to turn that one around. Do the hokey pokey with that stitch. Before hubby got home, I was watching one of those free YouTube movies. It was called Arrival. Pretty interesting. Had Jeremy Renner in it. More sirens out there. Goodness, goodness. Reorientate that one. Net pearl. Alright. That pearl stitch belongs to that side. Oops, I didn't reorientate that one. So I have 9 more rows after this time around. Then we'll be on to the fun heel flap. I was rewatching some of my video from yesterday. I didn't realize it, but I have a bruise right there on the back of this hand. I didn't realize that until I saw it in the replay of my video. I'm like, whoa, where did that come from? I don't remember that bruise. Oh wow, that's almost gone. It's a beautiful green color now. Oh gosh. Must have bumped it on something. fix that one. Uh-oh, Hen's got a hold of something. I see a would-be out there. I don't know what they got a hold of. Maybe I should take a moment and go look. I'll be right back. It was a pine chip they got from inside their house. I gave fresh pine chips. They're bedding in the house. Crazy birds. Okay, back to round one. It's the knits for all the pearls. I needed to get up and stretch anyway. That was good. This is why I like having cameras. I can see what's going on out there. Definitely is a warm, humid day. A little bit of a sprinkling yesterday. Are we having a good day today? It's pretty here, but we'll have storms later today. If I wasn't doing Sock Madness, I'd be out cutting my grass. It needs done again. It needs done again.
Yarn spinner scales. Yes, window's open for a while. Unfortunately, our mower is broken and hubby is working on it. Lost needs mowing here too.
Uh-oh. Broken mowers are no fun. I pretty much have to bypass the starter on mine. Now we're going to slip
Hard knit craft.
the nets, pearl
Hello,
pearls.
Katie.
Artnet, hello, hello. Happy Wednesday. Hope it's a good day for you. Up, slip, not net, slip, slip, slip. Slip the nets. I'm on my second time through the chart, so once I get to round 9 I can stop and work on the heel flap.
Hey, Katie.
Zakilia, hello, hello. Nice to see you in here.
Hard knit craft. Spent some time in the basement, but back upstairs now. Continuing to grind this test knit. So,
Ooh.
doing good. I get to catch you because I took the day off.
Oh, nice. Well, happy day off. I hope it's a good day. I hope it's for a good reason. Let me put it that way. That you had to take the day off. We spent last weekend rebuilding the roof out in the roofs. We built 3 roofs for the chicken area there. Instead of tarps, they now have actual roofs. Help keep them dry for this spring season going into summer. Hopefully they hold up well.
Zakila. Oh, Audemont, you're so sweet on me.
Oh.
Zakila. Allergy appointment, but the doctor was an idiot and told me I'm lying about having hives. Oh well.
Why would you be lying about having hives? That doesn't make any sense. Allergy season is a bummer.
Zakila. Because I didn't take pictures, and apparently normal people do.
Okay, I wouldn't have thought to take a picture.
Zuzu's 3 petals.
Zuzu, hello.
Sounds like you need to get a new doctor.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. The doctor apparently does not know what he's talking about. Or she, or whomever. I'm pretty happy with my doctor. She actually listens to everything I have to say, and she finds things that I didn't think was a thing. And she's like, oh, it sounds like you might be having this problem, and we can take care of that.
First time seeing this one. Sue, next time I'm seeing someone new.
Yeah, just ask for your files to be transferred. No, it's a pain in the butt to have a copy of your file, but I think it's ridiculous you need to ask to have a copy of your own file, your own medical records. It's all in their computer system. That's a silliness. Okay, next row has the Y cables. Apparently the breeze picked up a little bit there. You hear the charms really clanging. That's a rooster chime. I found it at Tractor Supply. Okay, this last stitch I am going to pop to the other side because I need it in order to do the cable on this next row. So I'm slipping this one. I'm going to grab that second stitch from behind, swap it with that one. Why can I not pull it? There we go. Slip those two back on. I'm going to knit this one. Pull my yarn in between. I'm going to pull that stitch over. Hold it with my thumbnail as I try to purl those two together. And then we'll knit that again. Purl a few. And again. Slip, slip from behind, swap them out with that knit, swap them back, pull the stitches. Whoa, I didn't mean to pull like that. I actually unpurled that one. It's fine, it's fine. I got it. Knit. Hold this to the front. Pull those together. Knit that stitch again. It's kind of tricky. I was doing it like this. I would grab a little DPN, do the two slips onto the DPN, swap it out with the knit, push the DPN down. Hey Ferric, hello! I think you got first. So we'll knit the knit, we'll come back to the DPN and purl those two together. Mayhap. There we go. And then we can knit that stitch again. That's a little easier to do. Hold the yarn down and out of the way here. So reorientate these. Grab that one. Grab this one from behind because we want the knit stitch to stay in front. Push the DPN in. The yarn in between that needle and the DPN. So we can knit this knit. Purl those two together from the DPN. Pull it out and then knit that stitch again. Boop, 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 and again. I'm finding that a little easier to do. Maybe not quicker, but easier. Knit. Pull those. hard when you get a handful of yarn already. Handful of stitches. Move my yarn out of the way. Grab that one, swap with the knit. Keep the yarn in between. Knit. Swing the right needle around to purl those together. Knit again. Ah, that's only half. I gotta do this side now. Fun, fun, fun. Just take it one little bit at a time. You can work through it. Honeycomb stitch is actually an interesting stitch. Bum, 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 bum. I was struggling when I was keeping it all on one needle. Whew. Let's pack. Where's the cloth? I just got something in my eye. I think it was an eyelash. It was kind of bobbing there for a little bit. I need to fix this knit stitch. There's a strand that went wonky on it. There we go. That'll make it easier. What's up, Mia? Oh, my eye wants to water some more. Slip those two back onto the DPN. Thumb in between. So you can knit this one. The right needle around to purl those two together. Take off the DPN and knit that one again. Do these purls.
Zuzu's 3 petals. There's a super high pollen count here today because of the humidity.
I bet. Okay, this gets a slit, but it's going to go to the other side. Pearl slip. Pearl the pearls, slip the knits. It's just the Y stitch that I need to use that. Oops, just slipped with the yarn in front and I should have been yarning back. Luckily it was just third stitch in. I could fix it easy. Alright. Everything's gonna shift over one. Curl in between. Shift over one.
Yarn spinner scales. Flying 8 ounces takes forever. 5 ounces on each bobbin Romney mohair blend.
Ooh, it sounds like a nice blend. I love plying. Plying's so easy. Plying is more of the non-thinking part. sorta, unless you're counting how many twists you're putting in it. A lot of the chickens are throwing dirt. They're so cute. So cute when they do that. Pearl. This stitch needs to pop to the other side. Because it's going to shift over. One stitch. Swap them out. And I'm going to pop that back to that side. Just so my count stays right. So when I go to do the heel flap, I don't have that extra stitch hanging out. Everything is where it should be. What you grunting about, Miss Mia? So I pull my hair back out of my face today so I can concentrate without the hair in my face. Yeah. That wind picking up. Good, beautiful day to fly a kite. Oh, let's go fly a kite up to the highest height. Go, made it all the way around. Now we're gonna purl the pearls and slip the knots. Starting with 2 pearls. Slip the knot. I'm gonna knit in between these 2 slips. Purl the 3 between those. Slip, knit, slip, purl. I do better when I don't think about it. I figure my birthday prizes I probably will send out next week. after Easter. That way the holiday is not gonna mess with the mail, if that makes sense. Alrighty. A cable. Start with the Pro 2. Strand from that one, it's in the way. There you go. So pull that one forward. Cable it, or pearl it, I should say. Swap these out. Turn that right. Grab the back loop of that one to knit. And then we're going to pearl this one. As soon as we can find the center of the stitch, there we go. That's better. It's a bummer when you split the yarn when you're trying to do the cables. Drop that one. Set those back. Turn that one around. And then pattern is being very splitty, making some of these cables a wee bit more difficult than they should be. Ba-ba-ba. Bum, 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 bum. Oh, there we go. There we go, there we go, there we go. Felt like I was gonna drop it, but I saved it with these nice, beautiful pointy tips of these Hiya needles. I love pointy tips. They help a lot. They help a lot. Especially when you're doing some tricky stuff. Pointy tips do come in handy. I don't think I have a mod in here at the moment. Give me just a moment. I'll start giving y'all a shout out. Whew. Finally made it. Finally made it. That closed the honeycomb for the second row. The section up here will get buried once this gets flattened out a bit. So if anybody else is here that streams, let me know. Found his treat.
Cave Fibers. So that's Zakila. Stream Elements. Go follow Zakila. Another awesome channel to hang out at https://www.twitch.tv/sakayla. Cave Fibers.
Is there anybody else? Zuzu, you stream too, don't you?
Go follow Yarn Spinner Stance. Another awesome channel to hang out at https://www.twitch.tv/Yarn Spinner Stance. Cave Fibers. So that's Zuzu's 3 pedals. Extreme Elements. Go follow Zuzu's 3 Pedals.
You're welcome.
Another awesome channel we can have at https://
I like to give shout outs on my channel.
Zuzu's 3 Pedals. Yarn Spinner's Tales. Thank you.
You are so very welcome. If anybody here doesn't follow Yarn Spinner's Tales, she does do a lot of spinning and plying, so if you're interested in any of that or have questions, go check her out. She has a great stream. I caught a little bit of your stream the other day and you were sorting through buttons, is that right? Some of your button collection. I caught a little bit of that.
Yarn Spinner's Tales. Yes, I had bought 2 big boxes of sewing supplies in the local auction. There was something of everything.
Nice. That's very cool. I bet it was fun to go through. My.
Yarn
Okay.
Spinner's Tales. Found 4 buttons sewn together to a small fabric envelope with a note. Note
Ooh,
said from Caveman's name, wedding best April 14th, 1927.
interesting. Extra buttons for a man's vest that he wore to a wedding. Okay, I need to read the pattern a little bit. Okay. I can erase that mark. Okay, did that. Work half the stitches in pattern before continuing to heel flap. Alright. I can do that.
Yarn spinner scales. Not quite. They had cut them off the best at some time.
Oh. Maybe it didn't fit anymore, or maybe it got torn or something, or just worn. But they saved the buttons from it. Oh, back in the 20s, 30s, everybody was very frugal with things. And probably for good reason. Wasn't as wasteful as we are today, that's for sure. Saved everything for later use. Actually, that's back to the beginning. So this should have 3 pearls to start. And it does. Okay. Oops, one stand didn't quite make it over. Let's make sure this is 33. 5, 10, 15, 25, 30, 32. Let's grab one more stitch from here. So I had one extra on that side. We'll just move it to this side. So we have the correct number. What is the number we need to have? Tis it is. Okay. Heel flap is worked over those stitches, so turn your work. Start working from the wrong side. See chart repeat. And we repeat the chart 4 times. Okay. Pearl that, slip with the yarn in front, it, yarn in front. There we go. Oh, I started from the wrong side. Oops. That was supposed to be a slip. Oops. Kink that back out. That throws it all off.
When's your deadline?
Whenever I get them done. The Sock Madness, it usually runs for 2 weeks or until all the slots fill. Whatever happens first. But within 2 weeks. And of course, I was hoping they hold off for a week because it's Easter, it's Holy Week. But no such luck. So I am trying to bust through and get these done before the holiday. If not, I can't work on it until Monday if I don't get this done by tomorrow evening. I'm not going to have time. We're going to be visiting family. Too many things going on. I'm just not going to have time for them. I started at the wrong side of the row though. Whoopsies. I was not supposed to purl that. That was supposed to be a slip with yarn in front. Then in it. Okay. I can do this, really. I think I would have had it because I've already done one sock. With this so much going back and forth, or this, yeah, the heel flap going back and forth so much. Meaning between slip stitches, net stitches, purl stitches. It's easier just to keep turning the work back and forth. Okay, so now we slip, knit, and then purl. There we go. This next row starts with the slip with yarn in back, the purl, knit purl, I should say purl knit, start the slip, that wind is definitely picking up. A few more hours here and that storm will be here. Purl the last. Turn. Slip. Knit across. I'm hoping to finish these tomorrow. That would be nice. Chickens don't like the wind.
Yarn spinner scales. Is the foot pattern too or straight knit?
The foot is, it goes a little wonky. So it starts out with all the honeycomb stitch and then it opens up and it has two separate points to the honeycomb. And this one here you actually do as you start the toe decreases. And the second sock is mirrored to this one. Yeah. So the points will be on opposite sides of the sock. Last